really do believe that these aliens can actually live up in the skies, and I do believe that they do come down.
There has to be something out there other than just us.
It feels like a little bit dumb to be like, there's nothing out there, you know? Like, there has to be something. We can't be the only things that exist.
So welcome back to Reality Check. I'm Ross Coulthart. This week, we're looking at a mystery that everybody in ufology with even a passing interest in the subject knows all about. We all know that 77 years ago, something happened near the town of Roswell, New Mexico. The rumor is it was a spacecraft, an alien spacecraft that landed somewhere in the desert, and it was recovered by a local rancher called Mac Brazel and brought in to the local sheriff, who at the time was a guy called George Wilcox. Well, 77 years on, the city of Roswell, has made a very interesting decision. Simply because they're the town that's famous for where a spacecraft allegedly crashed in 1947, and it's become a town for people who are fascinated by the possibilities that it might be a location for extraterrestrial phenomena. The city's police force has uniform patches, brand new uniform patches, that, frankly, are out of this world. Unveiled very recently, the new patches reveal the official city logo of a flying saucer with a classic beam radiating down to form the letter R. The words protect and serve those that land here form a circle and are separated by two tiny alien faces with large eyes. Police Chief Lance Bateman joins us now. Good evening, Police Chief. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Congratulations on what I suspect is a very adventurous patch. What's the reason for this decision? Why have you created this new patch?
Well, when I got chief last year, in the 1st of June, some of the questions I had were to the officers were, what do you want to change with the department? Well, what kind of improvements and such we can make. And some of the people had mentioned they thought it would be good to change the patch. It'd been over 30 years since we had a patch change. So I opened it up and gave them the opportunity to design one. We had a lot of officers and personnel that put in their designs, and the command staff broke it down to 4. And then we let the officers vote on it. And that's the one that came out.
Why aliens? Is it a big subject in Roswell even today, 77 years on from this mystery incident?
Yeah, we pretty much put it out whatever they wanted to design. We'd look at, and a lot of them put the alien theme on there. That's a big part of our community, probably for the last 30 years or so. It's a big tourist destination for people that want to come look at the UFOs. So wasn't so much when I was a kid growing up here, but it's grown a lot in the last 30 plus years, I guess.
So what do you know, sir, about the story of what happened 77 years ago? The US Air Force has tied itself up in knots over the years, giving 4 different explanations, all of which contradict each other, for what they say happened at Roswell in 1947. What do you know about what allegedly happened there?
That's pretty much all I know is what I've seen on TV and people talk around here. I think a lot of those people back in the day, some retired here in Roswell, and I would hear stories growing up a lot, mostly from the TV shows. But you talk to a handful of our residents, and they believe in it. Some don't. Uh, it's probably a question that may never get answered. I don't know.
Have you ever had anybody whisper in your ear, sir, that there's something more to this? I mean, I know because I know an awful lot of the Roswell researchers who've spent a lot of time in the city and the surrounding areas talking to witnesses. There have been, over the decades, many witnesses who've come forward claiming that they were aware that there were alien bodies recovered, an alien spacecraft secretly recovered by the US military and taken away and hidden somewhere. What do you make of those kind of allegations?
I don't know. Like I said, some people believe. I don't know if I do or not. Something I'll probably never know about. My father actually was stationed at Walker Air Force Base in the 60s. And growing up, you never heard about this until probably the early 90s, I think. It was brought back up. So I didn't really hear about it as a kid. He never mentioned anything as a kid, being on the Air Force Base down here. So it's popped up in the last 30 years. Some people are steadfast that they believe in it. And some people, either way, I think it brings a lot of money into Roswell every year. So I think one way or another, they'll keep it going.
So you haven't had the men in black knock on your door and tell you that it's not very welcome for you to put this on your new patch. Nobody's trying to stop you from putting aliens on your new uniform patch.
No, we've gotten a little, I wouldn't say pushback. Some of the retired Roswell Police Department, people, they don't like the design as much. Some of the community, I've seen posts on social media not liking it, but a majority of the people that have seen it on the uniform, we started transitioning, have given good feedback. And we've actually received a lot of emails from police officers around the nation wanting to get one of our patches. So overall, I think it's been positive.
Well, sir, I can tell you, I think you're going to have quite a saleable item on your hands. I don't know if police patches are sellable, but if you were at all interested, I'm sure there's going to be a long queue of people with an interest in the UFO UAP subject who are going to want a copy of the Roswell City Police patch. Is it going to be up for sale?
We've actually talked about that. We're still going to have more discussions, but of course, patches cost money, and it'd be a good way to supplement us buying patches for our uniformed people. So, patch collecting in law enforcement is a big thing nationwide, probably worldwide. So I think it could be, I wouldn't say profitable, but help us pay for our patches and some equipment.
Chief, have you in your time in Roswell ever had cause to wonder if some of the many people that you pick up and arrest for different offences might just be a slightly different person from a humanoid? You haven't picked up any aliens in your time?
A lot of the people we run into, we probably question every day, our officers. I think it's every community. I think some of these people, are so far off that they may be from another planet. So yes, our officers run into people every day like that.
Do you get ever sick of the fact that there's such a focus on aliens in Roswell? I mean, as I understand it, it's a beautiful part of New Mexico. It's fantastic scenery, fantastic local desert. Does it annoy you at any stage that the focus in Roswell is so much on this myth that goes back 77 years?
No, me personally, not really. And a lot of the businesses here down in Main Street, they kind of strive off that. So if it helps them and brings in some money for the community, I'm all good for it. It may get a little annoying when you have a lot of people come for the UFO festival. But it's good for the town, good for the city. So um, I don't think it takes anything away from the community. There's good people that live here. Our officers, that's some of the feedback of you're putting this patch on with alien stuff and it's taken away from, you know, their reputation and stuff, which I disagree. They were the ones that designed it. They wanted it like that. We got a terrific police force here, hardworking, dedicated, and I don't think a patch can take away what they do every day. I think the majority of the community sees that, and I'm very proud of them. And I'm happy, they voted on it and designed it. I'm happy they can wear it, and we'll see how long. One of these years down the line, maybe they design another patch. We'll just have to see.
So let's roll back. Let me give you a quick history lesson, sir, and roll back 77 years to late June, early July 1947. We don't know the exact date for sure, but we know that sometime in that period, a local rancher, Mac Brazel, found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, very near Roswell, about 75 miles north. And he claimed that the wreckage was pieces from a lot of what had been speculated in the media at the time were flying saucers that had been seen in the sky. And he brought it in, some of the material, to Sheriff George Wilcox of Roswell, who was the sheriff at the time. Sheriff George Wilcox alerted Colonel William Blanchard, the commanding officer of the Roswell Army Airfield, and the rest is history, sir. A massive conspiracy began 77 years ago. And as I understand it, you don't know what George Wilcox said about this whole saga. Is that correct?
I don't know. Like I said, I've seen a couple movies and documentaries on it. Don't remember the names. I do remember Mac Brazel's name and some of the Air Force people. So I don't remember the sheriff offhand.
No worries. Well, I can tell you that what happened was, at first instance, the Army Airfield, the Roswell Army Airfield, which was the predecessor to the US Air Force, they released a statement saying that they had in fact recovered a flying disc, and they'd gained the disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Shaves County. That was George Wilcox. And apparently, Sheriff Wilcox told his family multiple times that he saw both a spaceship and dead aliens, some dead and some still alive. And he told his family that he was told to remain quiet and that their lives, his and their lives, were threatened if they ever spoke about it publicly. What I'm intrigued about is, and it's a bit of fun, please play along in good humour, sir. I'm not trying to lead you into a dark conspiracy, but if 77 years on, a local rancher walked in with wreckage from what he said was a flying disc, would you let the military shut you down, sir?
Probably not. It's a different day and age. Now stuff would get on social media. That rancher would probably have it on social media before they ever reached here. But it's hard to even want to reach out to the government on stuff nowadays. So probably it ended up on social media before the government ever got contacted.
I've never met you before, sir, but I have read an awful lot about Sheriff George Wilcox, your predecessor from 1947. And the interesting thing about it is his whole family have spoken publicly about what he revealed to them of what he saw. His two daughters have given evidence. One of them's described holding in her hand something called memory metal. And apparently this piece of memory metal, when you squeezed it or deformed it, it would return back to the shape that it was originally in. And the funny thing is, this piece of metal was apparently bobbing around the headquarters of the sheriff's office. You haven't got anything hidden in a cupboard there somewhere, have you, sir?
Not here. Over at our sheriff's department, they may have something hidden over there, but who knows with them. So with us here, nothing that I know of, at least.
The fascinating thing is his two daughters gave evidence of how he'd told his wife, Inez, and she wrote about this later in a book, that there was a cover-up. Basically, he was threatened, told to keep quiet. And the mother, Inez, later on basically told the children and, in fact, a granddaughter that her husband, George, had admitted that there'd been alien bodies recovered. It scarcely seems possible, as you say, in this day and age, that something like that could be covered up. But I think, as you say, social media these days makes it so possible for things to be broadcast before the narrative can be controlled. Is it possible? I mean, do you think it's possible for things like that to be covered up in this day and age? I mean, is it even conceivable that something like that could be kept a secret, do you think? You guys in the police offices are so open and transparent these days with everything that happens under police control. Is it even possible to keep secrets like that?
It probably is possible. Nowadays, local state law enforcement, we have to wear body cameras and turn them on a lot of times. Federal government doesn't. So I could definitely see the federal government, me personally, I believe they probably have covered up some stuff, and it wouldn't surprise me if they covered that up. So wouldn't surprise me if they could.
So 77 years on, sir, a gentleman walks into your office with a piece of flying saucer and says, "Sheriff, have a look at this." And then the military come in and tell you, "I'm sorry, Sheriff, you're not allowed to talk about this. It's for national security. You've got to keep quiet about it." What are you going to do, sir?
It's a tough question right there. Knowing me, what are they going to do to me? I'm 49 years old. I can retire, so I'd probably have blasted it on social media already. If it was, from a flying saucer, if it was something with, you know, with uh, national security, maybe I'd keep it.
The thing I find fascinating about Roswell is it was the Roswell Army Air Force bomber wing that were responsible for dropping the bombs on Japan, the nuclear weapons on Japan. And for a while, it was the only part of the United States military that had nuclear weapons, deployable nuclear weapons from aircraft. Did you know that history at the Roswell Army Airfield?
I knew it a little. It was B-2 bombers or something base. I don't know a lot of history about it. Like I said, my father was stationed there back in the early to mid 60s. And um, so I've heard a little bit about it, but not in big detail.
I wouldn't be doing my job, sir, if I didn't ask if your father had suspicions himself that things were being withheld. What did he say from his time on the Air Force?
He never brought anything like that up. Like I said, it wasn't talked about probably for 30 years or so after. It kind of died off, I think, as far as I know, and then didn't get brought back up. I think early 90s, maybe. Even growing up, you didn't hear about the UFO stuff.
So when will the new uniform patches be formally put onto uniforms? Are they out already?
Yeah, they're starting. We ordered a small amount just to make sure they looked good on the uniform. We ordered 8,000 more to outfit the rest of the department, and all officers will have all their uniforms changed over, I believe, by August 1st.
Well, sir, I think a lot of people around the world and around America would like to thank you for showing good humor and I think a good sense of fun in putting this on your new patch. And I congratulate you for having a sense of humor and for, I think, also acknowledging what I think is a very important part of Roswell's town history.
No, I appreciate the time, and it's if you don't accept it, laugh about it and stuff. It's just going to probably drive you nuts. So I'm glad to do it.
So, Chief, thank you so much for joining Reality Check. And can I say, I think if an alien did turn up in Roswell, perhaps again, they'd feel welcome because they'd see that the town of Roswell's an open-minded place. And as you say in the brief that you've put together, I think there's a line that you actually have. It says, protect and serve those that land here, which I think is an honorable motto.
No, I appreciate that. That's what our sergeant that designed it came up with. Some people were, trying to correct our grammar online, but it is what it is. So that's on there, and that's what's going to stay on there.
Well, sir, it's nice to be able to hold you to a promise that if aliens do land in Roswell, you'll be the chap that puts it out on social media first. So thank you once again for joining us on Reality Check.
Why not? Why not? But no, I appreciate the time.
So before we go this week, I'd like to respond to a few of the questions that came in from our viewers in response to our analysis, our investigation of the Malaysian MH370 mystery, the disappearance 10 years ago of a commercial 777 passenger jet somewhere, either in the South China Sea, or if you believe the official version, somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. So one of the comments that we got, a question was, what is the reason why transponders are able to be turned off by pilots? Look, transponders are part of the way in which we track aircraft in our skies, and they are constantly displaying during flight. They're switched on by the pilots as part of the automatic checking process. And it's a good question. Maybe we should have an automatic transponder that can't be switched off. But certainly in the MH370 case, the evidence is that something happened to turn off the transponder, which meant that the commercial jet disappeared from the display on the radar screens that were being used by the controller in both Kuala Lumpur and Vietnam. And that meant that the plane was only being tracked by military radar. And for some reason, somebody was asleep at the wheel at Butterworth, the nearby army base in Malaysia, which should have picked up the aircraft flying overhead at the time. But one of the things that has been discussed and still is being discussed is ways of improving the detection of modern commercial passenger aircraft. Military planes have to be able to turn off their transponders because they obviously want to remain stealthy with a potential foreign adversary. So let's move on. How about filing an FOI request with the US government on flight MH370 and seeing how redacted the documents are? I wonder if this has already been done. Look, it's a nice idea. A lot of people have a lot of faith in freedom of information. I'm a huge FOI skeptic. Frankly, I've seen myself, both here in Australia, I've done FOIs in the US as well, and in the UK and Europe. Frankly, if governments don't want you to get some information, they're not going to give it to you under FOI just because you ask for it. And you often have to appeal to keep on pushing to get the release of information that really ought to be released. And it ends up being incredibly costly. So frankly, my personal opinion is that more often than not, FOI is a waste of time and money. Journalistically, it's no longer the good that it used to be in terms of exacting information. The only way FOI works for me is when somebody on the inside, they don't want to leak me the document, but they say, look, if you ask for this specific bit of paper with this particular title on it, we'll make sure you get it. And that's the way FOI works. It's kind of an official leak, if you like. But frankly, most of the time, I think FOI is a complete waste of time. How does it take 3 years to find a single and first piece of debris? That's a very good question. It is odd, isn't it, that the first piece of debris that was found, I think in late 2015, early 2016, was the flaperon on Reunion Island in the middle of the Indian Ocean near Mauritius. And it was a huge lump of debris. It does strain credibility, and I agree. It's extraordinary that these large lumps of plane were missed. And look, I've got friends who've flown on the Royal Australian air flights deep into the Indian Ocean looking for wreckage shortly after the crash. And they tell me that the water there, the ocean, was so wild. There were waves leaping 40, 50, 60 feet in the air. The idea that a piece of debris could remain intact in the way that these pieces of debris have remained intact strains credibility with me. And in fact, one of the things I want to mention, I didn't go into this in the story, is there's been a very, very interesting analysis of the mollusks done, of the shellfish that stuck to the flaperon as it crossed the Indian Ocean. And one thing that's fascinating, there's a great article by a friend of mine, Jeff Wise, in New York Magazine last month, where he looks at research that's been done by Australian scientists which analyzes the length of the growth of the mollusks that were found on the flaperon. And the duration of time that the flaperon was in the water is totally inconsistent with the length of the mollusks found on the flaperon that was recovered on Reunion Island. It's more consistent with warmer water to the north of the Indian Ocean. And that's a mystery that to this day still hasn't been resolved. Science is always imperfect, so it may be that there's a plausible explanation. But I think the shellfish mollusk analysis is one that ought to be taken seriously. There are scientists in Australia who do not think it is credible that the flaperon crashed in what's called the seventh arc, just to the west of Perth in the deep southern Indian Ocean, and then drifted across to Reunion Island. The growth of the shellfish on the flaperon is totally inconsistent with that analysis. Another question is, what was the motive? Well, that's a good question, a very, very good question. And it's one reason why I decided to bring Florence de Changy, the Le Monde newspaper correspondent, into our analysis. I've long been very strongly a proponent of the rogue pilot theory, the idea that someone, possibly, probably Captain Zahari Ahmed Shard, the chief pilot of MH370 on that night, for some perverse reason decided to commit a horrific act of mass murder and suicide, and that he controlled landed the plane onto the ocean, trying to make it sink as intact as possible after a long flight leading to fuel starvation. The only problem with that theory, and Florence Techongi goes into this in great detail in her interview with me and in her excellent book, is the family of Captain Zaharie Ahmed Shah say there's absolutely no motive, that the claimed political motive, that he had a deep resentment against the existing corrupt government of Malaysia and that he wanted democracy brought to Malaysia, that's not consistent at all with his personality. He wasn't the forceful political activist that some people have painted him as. Yes, the controlled landing theory is probably on the Occam's razor principle, the simplest explanation principle. It's probably the most plausible explanation for how the plane disappeared. But I think the motive question is a good one, and I think we have to keep an open mind on the motives behind whoever it was that did land the plane on the water doing what they did, if that's the explanation. If you believe Florence Techongi's conspiracy theory, Florence believes that there was an elaborate cover-up and that in all likelihood the flaperon and other pieces of wreckage have been planted. I have a saying in my line of work, it's a slightly more vulgar term in private company, but publicly we would say always assume a screw-up before a conspiracy. And I do think it's very hard to hide a conspiracy. Most secrets have a way of bubbling to the surface. So I still cling to the idea that the most plausible explanation for what happened to MH370 was that someone went crazy and decided to kill all of the passengers and crew and themselves and do a controlled landing on the water, which explains the damage to the flaperon and other debris. And it also explains why the plane has not been found in any of the areas where it's been looked for. Perhaps a rogue pilot did a controlled glide well beyond the existing search area and put the plane down on the water, in the course of which the right wing broke off and the flaperon was detached, and that's how it ended up in Reunion Island. There's a hell of a lot of ifs there, and I agree completely with the questioner. There's a very dubious motive. So that's it for Reality Check this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really enjoying the audience feedback. It's fantastic to get your responses. If you've got any tips that you'd like us to investigate for Reality Check, it doesn't have to be about UFOs, UAPs. It can be about any mystery that takes your fancy. Please get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. We love to hear from you. Thank you again. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.